do you focus on a particular sector, industry? Is there a particular offering that you bring that separates from the traditional Wall Street firms, or is it really driven by what your clients are asking for?
I think it's very similar to the Wall Street, although the one difference, especially from a fundamental standpoint, it's driven mostly from a quantitative standpoint, which then can go into the qualitative. As an example, we have a firm, Blue Hawk Research, which provides cash flow analysis, and they're building a model, and then out of that, we can write actual recommendations. Or Jefferson Research, both institutionally and then the retail product, Torpedo Watch, can analyze a company and figure out the potential for it to blow up or not to blow up, and then from there they'll drill down and do qualitative as well. So I think the use of quantitative, hence the name Quantitative Partners, is really value add to that process, and using both fundamentals and technicals. Technicals can be a big piece of the puzzle, and that's something that Wall Street firms seem to be cutting back on lately.
Let's talk a little bit about the profile you use to go through your stock selection. Let's go through some of the fundamental ideas and as well as the technicals, and expand on how you're using the technicals, not just to identify trends, but also on the risk management side. We stress that heavily. Make sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think an interesting place to start is, in the post-bubble environment, Elliot Spitzer decided to go and examine, the causes of the breakdown, and obviously he looked at the conflicts, and he decided that at the end of the day that the big firms are all going to have to pay hefty fines to bring in independent research. So as an example, Citigroup had to pay a $75 million fine over a 5-year period where they're paying $15 million a year for independent research. The interesting thing is that as Spitzer went through this process, he basically decided that the only piece of the puzzle he would use would be fundamental research, as opposed to technical. So that actually precluded one of the research guys we work with, Phil Erlanger, who does great technical research, from being used, but yet Jefferson Research and IPO Financial are both a big piece of that overall puzzle. So I agree with you that the technical ends up being a really big piece of the puzzle to figuring out when a company gets going.
Well, the question, we've talked about this before, AJ, sometimes when we're talking to folks, they want to know the secret of what the institutional guys do that the average guy in the street can't do. Is there a secret? I'll ask the question for the audience.
Investing.
When you're looking for fundamental parameters or technical parameters, either or, are you looking at the same things that somebody that's looking to manage their own portfolio is going to sit down and say, well, now here's what I'm going to look at on company ABC? Or do you really have proprietary measures that you're looking at?
I would say 20 years ago, definitely very proprietary measures. But with the birth of the internet and the ability of all sorts of information to come across it, I think that the playing field is getting equaled. And I think that is definitely a frustration of the institutions. So to me, the big difference is the amount of work that they're doing. They're rolling up their sleeves and really drilling down and really trying to understand that company. And they've got a lot of firepower within a shop. You might have a hedge fund that might have 30 analysts inside that shop, and so each person can drill down on a sector or a group. That's an advantage over the individual. But in terms of the analytics, I think the playing field is really being equaled, especially in the last 5 years.
So we haven't gotten to the point yet where the institutions are looking to see what the retail guys are looking at.
No, not yet. That may happen one day. But, you bring up a really interesting point as someone who has a good process and they want to get their ideas out there. Now they can do it for free with the use of a blog. Sure. And I think that's something that the institutions are looking at as blogs, I think the concept of insider information may go away someday because everything that's out there on the web, you just have to go X number of pages deep to probably find some information about, what's going on with a particular company.
Most of the analysts that we have and talk to, of course, you're not going to be right 100% of the time. Therefore, we incorporate the risk management strategies. Every single decision we make should be an exit strategy. I'm going to put you on the spot. I like doing that. Putting our guests on the spot.
I like that.
Of course, I'm not going to embarrass you and talk about the absolute worst ones, but let's talk about some of the good ones, the best picks that you've had over the recent time, and what were some of the fundamentals and maybe the technical signals that drove you to look at some of those stocks?
I think the key aspect is you're trying to get an inflection point where there's going to be a catalyst that's going to come up that's going to cause something to occur. So first, let's look from a technical perspective. I think Phil Erlanger does a great job of incorporating short interest, which is a sentiment indicator, and he also looks at price. So his two big things are to look at sentiment and price. And then now he's incorporated options as well.